So, hello, Harvard class, and my name is Michael Marcucci, and my project was to talk about the digital dollar. And in order to make the presentation work, I've invented this mythical organization called the National Chamber of Commerce, and this is a presentation to them so that they can advise and think about what their constituents, small and medium-sized enterprises and business in the United States, can do as the digital dollar moves forward. So, thanks in advance for listening. So yeah, what we're going to be talking about today, as you can see in the slide, is the digital dollar, the project initiation. We're going to talk about some scenario analysis, use some of those tools that we learned about in our class, the impact of COVID, some of the headwinds that may slow down the advance of the digital dollar, who the winners and losers might be, and also some of the different dynamics that those should consider, and then some conclusions around the rollout of the digital dollar. So the best way to understand this is to start with something called central bank digital currencies, and those are defined by the Bank of International Settlements, a copy of the report you're seeing on your screen by now, as a digital payment instrument denominated in the national unit of account that has the direct liability of the central bank. Now, this isn't just vaporware. As you can see from the slide, there's a number of countries that are experimenting with this and are bringing the concept forward in an aggressive manner. Domestically, we have a recent FedNote report, again, a copy that you're seeing in front of you right now, that describes the digital dollar in the United States as tokenized money issued by the Federal Reserve with the full faith and credit of the United States government, and it's a third form of central bank money in addition to banknotes and reserves, and acts as an alternative form of currency. So basically, it lives in parallel with other forms of money. That's the best way to think of a digital dollar. So yeah, using our scenario analysis tool that we learned about in our Harvard FinTech class, I decided to look at two fundamental dimensions of digital dollar adoption. One was the technological adoption, and the other was the concern around privacy and governance. I think these are the key aspects to be considered here in the United States. The technology adoption refers to the rate that the technology is adopted, and that requires being built and tested and executing past any pilot phases. And the privacy and governance issues are very critical here. Embedding the new digital dollar into blockchains will provide unprecedented transparency as well as threats to privacy as well. So I think that the optimal solution here is that we have a scenario where you have aggressive rollout of this with robust technology. We all know what happens when technology fails, particularly when money is an issue. And secondarily, all the privacy concerns and considerations of the digital dollar are accounted for by policymakers and lawmakers. I don't see this going forward without those two being adopted in a very, very aggressive and forthright manner. So we don't have to look much further than the Libra experience. The public backlash and now pivoting to Diem was quite significant when Facebook attempted to roll out its version of this. I think another dynamic is the people that we refer to as the unbanked, the 5 to 7% of the US residents who do not have access to a bank account. They're viewed as unprofitable as well. Hacking, also a very significant concern. Once we go digital, we have the aspect of hacking. Probably no different from having your wallet picked by someone in the airport, but it's still an issue. And privacy versus security. As you see in the bell curve that I have, on the one hand, you have absolute privacy, which would encourage criminal behavior or a terrorist to be receiving direct liabilities and funds from the United States government. And on the other side, you have absolutely no privacy. So Big Brother would be watching over all monetary transactions. So I believe these two extremes are going to animate the adoption and the policy conversation around the digital dollar. I did mention COVID before. COVID has dramatically impacted cash usage across the globe, as you can see in the charts that were prepared by McKinsey. In the US, McKinsey estimates that cash usage for transactions will drop from 51% about 10 years ago to lower than 30% in 2020. This dynamic effectively plows the road for the launch of the digital dollar because so many people are fearful of using cash. That doesn't completely obviate the issues around privacy and terrorist and AML issues, but it does plow the road for the mass market adoption of the US dollar with so few people using cash as it exists today. You know, the Fed estimates that the typical $5 or $1 bill changes hands 100 times a year, and fear, whether rational or otherwise, has turned the public away from cash. McKinsey continues to note that we've covered decades of adoption in one single year, The implication here is that the expectation for rapid adoption can be viewed as more likely. The stickiness of behavior changes is always interesting. The implication here is that which forces of the digital dollar roll out to be robust and well tested the technology. So in order for it to be received well, the technology testing must be extremely robust. We've seen operational challenges with Bitcoin, and that simply raises the bar and the level of expectations in the public for any digital dollar rollout. All this combines to say that small to medium enterprises have to face up to the fact that a digital dollar in one way, shape, or form is around the corner, and now is the time to prepare. So for small to medium enterprises to prepare, I went back to our scenario analysis tool and it focused on two dimensions: the nature of the product that the business is selling and the customer demographics. This second layer aspect would help small to medium-sized enterprises decide on what type of resources and how best to prepare. The winners in this scenario will pivot very, very quickly, and the losers will be those who fail to evolve. The rollout of the digital dollar is best understood as part of the continuous wave of innovation that keeps moving us forward. So we don't view this as a discrete event. We view the rollout of the digital dollar as a part of the continuous wave of innovation. And while the digital dollar will have broad policy implications that reverberate with monetary policy and government stimulus, we should think of the digital dollar as one more step in this continuum. And so the fact pattern indicates that customers who are younger and more digitally savvy will continue their evolution toward all things digital. Others will adapt slower. The impact and the action is to consider the nature of their locales, the demographics of their customers, and the strength of the competitors as this continuum continues to evolve. Second fact pattern is impacting banks. Banks that have invested capital in the storage and movement of cash with ATM machines and brick and mortar branches will continue to see diminished activity. So in a situation where a central government is sending cash in the form of a tokenized or a digitized currency directly to businesses or consumers, that need for the physical cash diminishes. That will end up raising the cost of those transactions as you have fewer transactions spread out over the same legacy network. The impact is diminished cash processing services, and that raises the cash, or the cost rather, for cash distribution, which includes ATM networks. So the winners, as you see with the New England Patriots logo, will be those who are aligned their distribution, price, and promotion strategies to this rapidly evolving dynamic. And the losers will be those who fail to evolve, those who continue to rely exclusively on physical cash and do not ride this wave of innovation as it eventually arrives. So with all that said, what are some concluding thoughts on the digital dollar and the road to adoption? So the digital dollar has accelerated from an idea to feasibility study in a very short period of time and has been driven by COVID with a behavioral shift in the minds of the consumers. The behavioral mean reversion is unlikely. I don't see us going back to the days of cash after this dramatic displacement from COVID. The path forward must include strong technology plus an embrace of privacy and government concerns. The recent disruptions with cryptocurrency trading highlight the need for operational readiness. We saw what happened with the Robinhood platform. Imagine that happening with a digital dollar. And then once the digital dollar moves into reality, we have a cascade of other forces will further accelerate its adoption. And then, of course, public policy must resolve access for the unbanked. If someone is unbanked and doesn't have a phone or a bank account today, they will not be able to have access to or enjoy the benefits of a digital dollar. In the end, small to medium businesses may be forced by cost concerns to complete the migration from cash to the digital dollar and other forms of digital money. And this is not something that is vaporware or happening in the soon tomorrow. In fact, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell gave testimony on this just recently to the Congress, and we're going to have a public dialogue. He's committed to that. In the meantime, we're working on technical challenges. I think he's savvy enough to know that the Federal Reserve can't get ahead of its skis and that this is something that will require legislation from Congress, which of course requires a public input and public debate. So those are my thoughts on the digital dollar. I look forward to seeing your presentations, and thank you very much for listening.